Welcome to TheoTrade. This is Don Kaufman. It is August 8th, 2017. Well, this was really today a tale of two completely different marketplaces. If you just tuned in the after hours and you're looking at the S&P's down 550, you missed it. What did you miss? The fact that we had a fairly explosive rally on our hands early in the trading day. Now, before I go any further into some of today's action, and more importantly, what I expect for the next few days, before I get to really any of that, there was big time news out during the trading session, news regarding, for example, North Korea. All right, that was substantially later in the day, and the reversal that occurred today was already in play prior to any of the North Korean headlines that kind of came out. So I'll start with the fact that the S&Ps started out the day 2474. And again, you got to remind yourself that we're coming off of what could only be described as one of the most boring days. I mean, yesterday was one of the most boring days in the entire, lifespan of the S&P 500. And here today, we throw off a fairly wild range. So the market today opens right around 2474, takes off, okay, all the way to 2488. Now, there was a key product that I've talked about on Monday. I talked about it extensively in this weekend's video, and that product has been the financials, has been the XLF. And I said, watch the XLF for the next market move. And it was, in fact, the financials. This was the backbone of today's rally. Now, along with that, yeah, you had, Apple to the upside in terms of technology. Apple right out of the gate was also smoking, okay? But it's the XLF specifically that was driving the S&P futures, and it's also the XLF that saw the fairly wild reversal on an intraday basis. Now, again, it might not look like much because for the most part, where did we start the day on the XLF? Right around 25.34. Where did we end the day? 25.28. For the most part, you're like, oh, great, Don. We were massively unchanged. And you get that exact same feeling kind of in the S&P. But again, for those of you that traded at an intraday level, we had a great intraday reversal. Listen, you can't complain when you come off of 24.88 all the way down to the 24.70 level. Okay, I'll take an 18 or 20 point reversal any day, okay, of any given week. So with that, where does that ultimately leave us? So again, some news breaks. When the news actually broke, that is when the volatility really started to react. So the volatility futures, for the first time in a very, very long time, were bid higher on that North Korean news. And again, I'm showing you the market was reversing already from 9:30, but there really was no activity inside of the volatility futures. However, as I kind of said, this is like a little bit of a tale of two different markets that played out today. If you haven't seen this or you haven't looked at it yet, this is the VVIX. This is not something we bring up each and every day here at TheoTrade, but it's absolutely something I look at in a much broader sense for what risk is doing. So tons of people look, of course, at what we know is the volatility index, the VIX. What is the VIX? Well, the only way that the VIX moves, and I'll just highlight it on your screen here for just a moment, but the only way the VIX moves, okay, is if traders come in and buy a ton of options, specifically put options, in the SPX. So for the most part, to get the VIX to move, you need SPX options to be purchased. It's about supply and demand. People always call the VIX, the fear indicator out there. But the fact of the matter is, you could be selling a bunch of S&P futures and the market could be absolutely tanking. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go out there and buy puts. What traders and what more astute traders do today is they use the VVIX. And if you don't know what the VVIX is, the VVIX is really measuring the option volatility on the VIX itself. So instead of traders now going in and buying SPX options, believe me, okay, people still trade plenty of SPX options, right? It's one of the granddaddy of all the products out there. Today, the SPX, and I'll make a point with this, the SPX traded just about 1 million contracts, which if you look at the Sizzle index, the Sizzle compares today's option volume versus the previous 5 trading days. So the Sizzle says 1.15. That basically means that the SPX did quote unquote normal volume versus the previous 5 days. Okay, so nobody panicked and nobody went into the SPX. But if you look at the VIX, okay, and let's go take a look at the VIX traded almost 1 million contracts today, just shy of 1 million contracts. It did 1.4 times the norm. So for the most part, okay, the VIX options seem to be where traders now are heading to mitigate their risks. And if they're going to trade heavily in VIX options, and specifically if there's a demand for VIX options, well, that impacts the VVIX. And the VVIX, okay, what is our VVIX over here? Well, the VVIX, it's the volatility of the volatility index. I know, it's a derivative of a derivative of a derivative. It's a tertiary derivative. That's an exciting phrase. Anyway, the VVIX exploded higher today. When the VVIX, and I'll give you some really general numbers, when the VVIX gets north of 100, which it's just shy of, right? But when it gets north of 100, you better start paying attention, okay? It doesn't crack over 100 very often. When it does, it should grip your attention. That means trade has come in and they've just bought volatility with both hands. When the VVIX, okay, spikes above 110, that's usually, oh, duck and cover, we're going in. And again, you'll see this occur a few times. Now, back here, you're like, well, what occurred back in April? It was actually initially the French election, okay, that spiked the VVIX. So you can see over the last 3 years, and we're looking at a 3-year daily, you can really count the number of times the VVIX has truly gotten, quote unquote, lit to the upside. And let me actually show you specifically, okay, in most of those instances, what's actually occurred. So if you see the VVIX spiking up in this area, I mean, we're talking all the way back, into 2014. This is actually it was the Ebola scare, okay, coming into 2015, 2016. You can see one monstrous spike. That's a real print. That was actually August of 2015. Again, in late 2015, the VVIX spiked, but I'm going to remind everybody in early 2016, right in this neighborhood, the volatility spiked well before the market sold off. So everybody that was in the know, they went out there and they hedged themselves well before the markets actually sold off. That market bottomed in early February of 2016. And again, each one of these spikes inside of the VVIX is met with some fairly extreme, okay, volatility. At this point in time, just put it, okay, to the lower end of your page. Keep it in the back of your mind. The question is going to loom large tomorrow. If there's any follow through and sell side activity, if the VVIX starts to clip not just north of 100, north of 100 should catch your attention, north of 110. North of 110, again, means we're going in. And that's what we'd want to look for, and sometimes the VVIX, it's not typically a day late and a dollar short, but sometimes you're using it just for confirmation. Like if you saw the S&P is down 15 or 20 points at the open tomorrow, the VVIX may spike to 110, but that's confirming a much more serious, okay, volatility event is ultimately playing out. Now, we're through the vast amount of earnings, okay? What do we have to look forward to? You got nothing to look forward to right now other than some volatility and a couple of headlines that might be out there. Again, all eyes, okay, from where I stand, they have got to be paying attention to the financials. The financials, okay, are what are driving right now the S&P futures. And the financials today, in my opinion, I think we just saw a key reversal, okay? We're having the slightest bit of a downtrend, but this was an explosive move, huge reversal. For those of you that are into candlesticks, the Doji Hammer. With that, again, watch the XLF, look for some sell side activity here in the next couple of days. Remind everybody, hey, pretty much the week right now, we've moved nowhere. Monday, we did much of nothing today. We reversed, ended up, generally speaking, fairly flat on the day. But with this kind of key reversal, maybe we'll see some follow through to the sell side activity over there. Thanks everybody for joining us here at TheoTrade. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.